When we get to Alexandretta, we will face 3 challenges. First, the breath of God. Only the penitent man will pass. Second, the word of God. Only in the footsteps of God will he proceed. Third, the path of God. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth.
What does that mean?
I don't know. We'll find out.
Oh my gosh, Corey, it's time to talk to our favorite people.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back to Showstoppers. We hope you're doing well on this fine whatever evening it is that you're listening, or morning, or midday, or lunch break that you might be listening to this on.
Yeah. There are no external factors happening in the world right now that would give us any reason to believe everyone's not doing great.
No.
For like historical timestamp, we're recording this on the 7th of January, 2021?
Yes, it is the 7th of January.
When the historians or the archaeologists dig into this story after the fact, they'll be able to retrofit that. But yeah, there's no reason to believe that everyone isn't in like high spirits and feels like totally just like, you know, that blithe, maybe ignorant, some people might call it cynically, that feeling of comfort and contentment when you know that there is nothing that requires your attention, that your family is healthy and well, and the things you love, you can explain why you love them, and you feel a sense of like possibility on the horizon, but nothing that makes you get out of your chair. It's like that perfect little contentment atmosphere. So there's no reason to believe everyone isn't feeling that exact same thing right now, as both you and I definitely are.
Correct. Those are all of the emotions that I'm feeling right now. You described them perfectly.
Well, I was reading off the note you sent me, so yeah, I hope I nailed it.
You did. You nailed it. And in case you are not feeling the same way, just go do something else besides scroll through the doomsday that is Instagram right now. But you know, we don't really want to talk about that. We want to talk about like really fun things, and we're really excited to sort of introduce this next series actually, because we have, and by series I mean like quote, I put it in air quotes.
Yeah, because we have real end date in mind. It could be the rest of time, but we made a decisive decision on what we want to talk about.
Yes, we do. Do you want to tell them what we're talking about?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, not the movie, but like
not the movie.
Idea.
Yeah. We both have that natural dramatic instinct, Jesse. Like, no, not The Secret. Right. You save that for a little bit on. You hijack their question. Right. They want to know tough shit. We're gonna build some suspense. No, Jesse and I we're talking about, because the last episode that would have come out was Queen's Gambit.
I know. And I think about that episode all the time because that show was so good.
It's so good. Like, and maybe we'll revisit that. Let's do like a year later, and just so we have an excuse to talk about it again. But like, we were both so rapturous about it. And then that pretty much wrapped up 2020 for us. That was the last thing that came out that we could reach a consensus on. And we were both like kind of rewatching old shit. And Jessie was digging into her favorite reality shows and stuff like that. And I was just like watching Deadwood again for the sincerely the third time since quarantine. Pardon me. But we couldn't really decide anything to talk about. So we said like, well, fuck it. Like, why let the market dictate what we're going to talk about? Most especially if we might be going into an uncertain future where there are a lot of stops and starts with COVID productions happening and stuff. So we just decided to kind of celebrate a late Christmas with one another. Merry Christmas, by the way, Jesse.
Merry Christmas, Corey, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And also, we're way ahead of us there. Yeah, Happy New Year indeed. So we decided, like, if we can't count on any new show to come out, and we don't want to have to, like, talk about something that we're kind of met on, because that's not a fun way to spend our time or yours, we're just going to spend some time talking about our very favorite things in the world. Specifically, we're going to spend the next probably few weeks or so diving into Jesse and my's top 5 movies. Top 5 Jesse, top 5 me. Today is Jesse's turn. So the kind of the late
I get
Christmas
to go first.
You do, yes. Well, also because there's a very special guest I want to involve for my first episode in this series. When I talk about my favorite thing in the world, I want to talk alongside my favorite people in the world, and we're missing one. So, Jesse, what is your late Christmas gift for me?
Okay, so I think we need to talk about, so we challenged each other to make sort of our top 5 list, right? And so this whole thing was really difficult. And I think this is also going to be a really interesting study of your love of movies versus mine, because my list, I think, when I watch a movie, I want a movie that I know I'm going to watch again and again and again and again and again. There are really great, artistic, deep, lovely movies, but I don't really need to watch them again and again and again. I'll give you an example. Parasite, right? I love that movie, and I watched it twice. But I'm not going to run out and watch that movie again right now at this moment. It's probably going to be at least another 2 years before I watch that movie again. But the movies on my list currently, I watch at least once a year, if not more. Because they're just movies I can have on the TV and listen to and enjoy like I'm watching them for the first time every single time. And that, for me, is how I made my favorite movies, my top 5. So my gift for you today, and the reason why I did it this way. I could not decide what is my number 1 all-time favorite movie, because they all have different moments and different purposes. So I literally made them in no random or no specific order. And then I numbered them, and I made Corey pick a number between 1 and 5. And he picked the number 4. And number 4 happened to be Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is probably not 4 on the list. It's probably higher. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I could watch it over and over and over again. Yeah, so I can't talk enough about this movie. I think we have so much to dig into because first of all, it's a classic. Second of all, Harrison Ford is hot as fuck.
Yep, correct.
So is Sean Connery.
Yep.
Hot as fuck. Let's see. Can I make this an explicit episode of our podcast?
I'm gonna if you don't. Yeah.
And I have just vivid memories of watching this movie with my dad, and the whole Indiana Jones series as a whole I watched with my dad, but this one in particular I think just gets me because it was the first one that I watched. It was the first Indiana Jones movie I saw. I don't know why I saw the last one first, and by last I mean we don't acknowledge the fourth one.
Exactly. The last of the major canon. Yeah, the last of the officially recognized Indiana Jones franchise.
Exactly. We do not acknowledge the Crystal Skull in any way, shape, or form.
I will stick up for the opening scene. I think I've said this to you in the past. I will stick up for the opening refrigerator scene that everyone shits on. I think it's pretty good. Kate Blanchett is fucking wild good in that movie.
Of Crystal Skull? Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that scene. I would need to even watch it again. I don't even know if I want to give it the grace to do that.
Indiana Jones survives the blast of a nuclear bomb by getting into a lead-lined refrigerator. It's great.
I mean, maybe that begs the question, did he get eternal life from?
I think, God, you just unlocked this whole fucking thing. No one was watching it in the context of this is an immortal being. We'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that.
We'll get to that, but maybe, I don't know. But yeah, this movie is one of my all-time favorite movies. I've actually seen it twice this year already. We watched it with a group of friends during quarantine on one of those services where you could chat at people while you watch a movie, which who invented that, by the way, because it's really annoying to have to keep up with a chat while you watch a movie.
Yeah, the ideal service, because I've done a couple of those as well, and while I loved the chance to watch the movie and then do a communal experience, typing while watching a movie sucks. That's no fun.
Not only typing but reading. You have to keep up with the running joke or the oh, there that thing is again. Everybody type about it, or I'm like, oh my god, I
wasn't replying to him. No, what I said was really funny, but you have to understand it in the context. If I was replying 4 comments ago to this person, but I can't tag them in the chat, it's a shitty service. It sucks.
It's really complicated. And like you said, I loved the communal experience of it all, but woof.
However, yeah.
It was difficult for my brain to process it all. um, but I think there's so much we can dive into in this movie. But I think I have to talk about like why I feel so passionately about it.
Yeah, please do.
It is the first Indiana Jones movie I saw. I think it established the characters really nicely for me. Like it established Indiana really well because you sort of see his origin story before you see anything else. And I think as a 9-year-old, I was like, oh wow, this is a really attractive movie. I like it. And it was action and adventure. And I loved all of those things growing up. But I also just have this like vivid memory of like maybe the first time I had seen a glimpse of this movie of my dad like sitting on the couch, like he would come home from work and then see what was on like AMC or what were the other like old
TBS, TNT.
Yeah. And they would just replay these movies and Last of the Mohicans and all of those like random movies that dads love.
The dad energy movies, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And this was one of them. And I think the camaraderie between the relationship between the father and son, I think is what gets us every time. And I think anything that makes my dad and I laugh in a movie, we're going to count it as good, even if it's stupid. So I really appreciate that about this movie. But yeah, that's the memory, is like seeing my dad watch it and giggle, and then me saying like, what is he watching? And then getting over there and seeing what it was all about. But this movie, I think, is also like the first of the national treasures, like the movies that had this historical element or this mythical element, depending on what you want to call this particular movie.
What, God and the Cup of Christ?
Like historical or mythical?
Oh, sure.
I don't know. Up to you. But yeah, I love National Treasure, first of all. And I think it's like maybe one of the only Nicolas Cage movies I like. Mm-hmm. And so I think that this was the predecessor for me to introduce me to these kinds of action movies that I really enjoy, that have this sort of historical elements. Like, oh, that's a real thing that happened. And they're sort of connecting the dots.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people who love this movie a lot were introduced to it in almost the exact same way. I was introduced to it in very much the same way as you. It's like, this is the movie a dad shows their kid. Like through and through. This is a father and kid movie. I think it's more specifically a father and son movie for a lot of folks, but like you have a very special dad. And I think he thinks that he's just like, as his prized treasure, he's going to show you whatever he wants. But I have very similar memories of like, this was the first one I saw of the Indiana Jones trilogy. I saw these in order that I saw them. It was 3, 2, 1. So I didn't see Raiders of the Lost Ark.
3, 2, 1 also.
Yeah. How weird is that shit? Okay. Because I think
that's funny.
I sort of understand that like maybe dads are more likely to show their kids this movie because of the father-son element. But also I think I don't know. I guess the franchise has been out long enough to where dads of the nation and the world grew to love it already. So like, oh, I can show this one to my kid because it's kind of cute. There's no drinking in the movie or whatever. But yeah, we had this very similar memory of my dad turning this on, not by choice, just like scrolling through the channels, just like Mike did, and saying like, oh, this is really good. Hey, he's about to pull his whip out and do this cool thing. Check this out. And it was like thinking of being introduced to Indiana Jones is very strange because he's so much part of like the movie firmament, and he's such an iconic character, and he's such like a landmark work of art. The Indiana Jones movies I love so much now. Thinking back to when you first saw a thing is a very strange, disorienting experience, because at some point my dad said, no, he's going to go back for his hat. And I remember that very distinctly. I was like, oh, he loves his hat. That's cool. I like my hat too. I got some pretty cool hats. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you talk about like Indiana being the icon, right? And obviously he is. I know that's very, very cliche to say, but I think he is in such a big way. Like I wanted to be him. I wanted to have the hat and the whip and the leather jacket and the horse. I wanted all of that.
Absolutely.
And we're diving into a larger theme for Jesse here, which is like, why are all the good characters dudes? And it gave me such a complex because like when we played like imaginary things, I always played the like lead dude character, right? And because they were the coolest. I didn't want to be like the friend. I wanted to be Indiana Jones. And so I think that's really interesting. But I love Indiana Jones. I love what he sort of represents, which I don't really know what that is besides just like a badass dude.
Yeah, I mean, like archaeology, I guess. But no, I think he is, you've really stepped on something, which is the appeal of Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford hits all markets. And he's a really good example of why a movie can work on the back of its star, because he is the most beautiful human being that's ever lived. He's so pretty. And also he fulfills like a masculine quota for a lot of folks that don't really look too hard at him. He fills like the hot meter for women and gay men. He is likable and he's funny because he's kind of detached. He almost has like a Bill Murray, like winking at the audience thing.
He's like a bad boy, or like he plays hard to get. He's the guy you'll never get, like, I don't know where I'm going with that, but like he's that one. He's unattainable.
Right. He's unattainable because he doesn't give a shit. I think a part of Harrison Ford as the person's appeal is that he doesn't care about anything in this world. He's always grumpy and he never wants to be where he is, which is, I think, a really appealing character quality for something like this. Yeah. But the other thing that really appealed to me when I was a kid, I think that I'm just like kind of unpacking now, is that Harrison Ford is kind of a dweeb and a klutz. So he has a real history of bodily injury on sets of almost every movie he's in. And every few years or so, he's like crashing his helicopter up in the Pacific Northwest. Harrison Ford is a klutz. The famous scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where he's almost in a sword fight, but then he just shoots the guy. It's an iconic moment, but they had planned a huge sword fight and whip fight for him to take part in, but he had gotten diarrhea from the local water, so he couldn't shoot it. So they had to like go with Plan B, which is like just shoot him. So much of
funny to think about the fact that Harrison Ford had diarrhea while filming that.
Stars, they're just like us. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's something really, really interesting and textural about how sexy and nerdy and weird and klutzy while also like extremely masculine adjacent a person can be. Like how else do you describe like the universal appeal of Harrison Ford? He has to hit all quadrants just because he's such a weird individual,
And I would say that Han Solo is a very similar character to this in a lot of ways. So he's kind of playing to his strength, I guess, because he knows what kind of energy he gives off on screen.
Yeah, he does.
So I think that it makes sense that he sort of played these characters across his career. I think what's really interesting is to see Harrison Ford in something like the remake of, hold on, now I got to find the name of the movie. Because I'm going to forget it. It's the remake of the
Wild?
No, it's the remake of the Audrey Hepburn movie.
Roxanne?
No. Hold on.
Selena? Something like that?
Selena.
Yeah, Selena. Yeah.
Where he plays sort of a different character. You see like a kind of different side of Harrison Ford.
The debonair side of Harrison Ford. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think he does have the other sides, but the most interesting versions of Harrison Ford are Han Solo and Indiana Jones. And, when he has a gun in his hand is usually the most appealing part.
When he's at his best, but he always has a gun in his hand or a whip in his hand or something, but he's always behind the 8 ball as well. Like he's never in control of the situation. He's always kind of like he's in over his head all the time. And while he knows archaeology extremely well, because he's a fucking nerd, when it comes to the action part, he's always slightly ill-equipped, and he gets out of it through his resourcefulness and stuff. But he's identifiable because he's not Superman. He's always falling down or getting punched or getting thrown out of an airplane or something. And he always just barely makes it. So like every little mini action set piece is him being a low status action hero, someone who should not be in this movie, but is suddenly forced into the situation, which is like you don't have to describe why Indiana Jones is good. Indiana Jones is really good, but let's get into it, bud. What is it about the movie that you'd like to discuss with me?
Well, let's see. I think we have to like discuss the big moments that make this movie so great. And I think we can't talk about this movie without talking about Sean Connery a little bit as well. Because he, in and of himself, is an icon, not only for being Indiana Jones's father,
he did other
Professor Henry Jones in this movie. But you know, he was in like a big thing called what's the name of it again?
Johnny English.
Bond? Yeah.
That was the one. Yeah. So you have Sean Connery, like icon of cinema, like basically not even the Harrison Ford of his generation, because he was all cool. He was like. Yes. He was what Indiana Jones is not. So he's always in charge of the situation, extremely suave, extremely debonair, while also being like all sexy all the time. So in this movie, him playing against type as a complete dweeb is delightful.
Oh,
delightful.
So good. And also like seeing Sean Connery's James Bond movies was another one of the set of movies that like our dads presumably just had on, you know? And so I think you think about watching those as well when you're seeing these movies because he's such a different character. He plays something that is not like you think of Goldfinger or you think of Thunderball. These are not the Sean Connerys that we know in these Bond movies, you know? But that's what I love about it is he's still so good because he's charming in a different way. He has the nerd charm. It's like the birth of the nerd appeal. And I'm giving him too much credit for that, but he's definitely playing this character where he makes you laugh, but he's also like kind of smart, but also he's given his son a hard time the whole time, which is I think another appealing a way a father and a son or a father and a daughter, a father and a kid could relate to it, you know? Yeah.
And I think like Harrison Ford is in large part responsible for the appeal of their dynamic. Because if you have an Indiana Jones type that's extremely likable through and through just because of all the things we've just stated, and there's someone that's higher status than him that he defers to, that goes a really long way because we're now in movie 3 of trusting everything that Indiana Jones says. And the moment is something so powerful about him reverting to his childhood self as soon as he's in the presence of his dad, either in the opening scene as River Phoenix or later on in the movie as he continues to defer to his dad and then argue with him. There's a real power to that. Like, oh, this is Indiana Jones's boss. This is the guy he reports to in a certain way. So we didn't need that to establish Sean Connery's authority, but it's very interesting in playing against type. And I think there's also something interesting about the fact that you and I encountered Sean Connery first here. This is a very strange way, given the context of his career, to have encountered him. I think I want to run down a list of movies I saw before I saw Sean Connery in a James Bond movie. So I saw, obviously, this one. I saw, I believe the movie is Dragonheart with Richard Gere, where Sean Connery plays a talking dragon, which kicks ass. I saw Finding Forrester, the Gus Van Sant movie, where he plays a mentor and writer to the inner city kid. And I saw, what was the other one? What else is? Oh, The Rock, where he plays the only man to have ever escaped from Alcatraz. And every one of these movies was old man Sean Connery. So the only frame of reference I have was when he was over the age of 60, 65 years old.
Yeah, it's so funny. I agree. I'm looking at his filmography right now, his list of movies here. And I saw him in Macbeth, I think, before
Sure.
I saw him in
Uh-huh.
007 James Bond.
I saw him in Highlander. That was like the first young man Sean Connery performance I've ever seen, where he's playing a Spanish lord, not changing his voice at all, and he's still like 45 years old in that movie. So I'd never actually seen Sean like that version of him. And now
Yeah.
that I have, obviously, like that's an incredible like solid gold, hang the jersey in the rafters performance as James Bond. He redefined the entire character. He's
Yeah,
Southern
and he has
Scottish
like
now.
some of the most iconic
Mm-hmm.
movies, right? So
Yes, he
he's
does.
got Diamonds Are Forever. He
Mm-hmm.
has Goldfinger. He
Goldfinger,
has
Doctor No, even the first one
Doctor
he made
No.
is
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
He's got all of the ones that people know in a lot of ways. So from Russia with Love,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the one that people really think of. I mean, at least I do. I think he's one of the better Bonds, but if not the best.
Well, he was like Ian Fleming, the writer of the James Bond movies, didn't want him to be cast in the part because he was a Scottish man and Ian Fleming was an Englishman. And he, as soon as he saw the performance, because he didn't get his way, as soon as he saw the performance, he canonically changed James Bond to being Scottish. Like James Bond is now a Scottish character because he loved the Connery performance so much. And like the opening shot of Dr. No, when they first go up to the baccarat table and like through the smoke, you see James Bond light his cigarette and say his name. Like there has never been something cooler or sexier or better or just like more perfect in the language of film than that introduction of James Bond. It's so beautiful. And to not have that in your head as he like smashes his head with a vase and freaks out and like sings like Harvard fraternity club songs with his dork friend in the tank. Like
Yeah.
you're missing such an important piece of that puzzle there. So that's obviously, that's got to be a draw for the dads of a certain age who came up and they were little kids when Bond was around and stuff. So maybe that's a reason that so many people our age were shown this movie first because of the Sean Connery factor, because it's so funny to see James Bond be a dork. That's got to play some part, right?
You're right. I think, and there must have been something about funny about that to our dads and
Sure.
People who really brought that, saw him in both, and were like, oh wow, look at this different guy, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that's the beautiful thing about life is to understand like 20, 25 years down the road why your dad was laughing at something. That's a really like special moment in life.
And you don't really get there. Like the moment where they both realized that they'd had sex with the same lady, like when I was a kid, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like,
absolutely
that could never happen. What are they even talking about?
I didn't know what either of them were talking about. Yeah. No, absolutely not. Like, why are they both being so weird and cagey about this nice lady that's helping them? Like, what's going on here? And my dad would not explain what that joke was. I remember distinctly. Like, I was like, what happened? He's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They're about to do a thing with the motorcycle. Don't worry about it.
You have to think about like what you'll do when your kid asks you that question. I'll be like, probably, I don't know. Well, let me tell you about. I don't even know what I would do. I'd probably do the same thing. I'd be like, we'll talk about it later. You know?
Let me tell you about the natural boundaries that nature has established for itself. So there are certain things, you know how we love to play catch in the backyard, we build a snowman. There are certain things that you and I cannot do in the same room as one another.
That's one of them. Yeah. That moment is fantastic. I think there's just so many good ones, but I think we have to also sort of touch on this controversial opening segment.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then we can dive into some of our favorite moments. I think that would
absolutely
be really fun. But yeah, this now you were telling me this actually. That it's a controversial one. I didn't know this. So tell us more about.
Yeah, I think why a lot of folks who were not children when they saw this, and this opening scene is 1,000,000% for children. But I think a lot of the adults that reviewed it at the time kind of wrote this movie off in large part, I think, because of the opening act or maybe just the opening scene of the movie. Because one of the least interesting things you can do when building canonical story, especially when you've already have an established canon, and we learned this very distinctly with the Star Wars prequels, is that I don't give a shit where Darth Vader's helmet came from. Like, that's not why it's cool. It's cool that he has it. Like, we can imagine the backstory there. And this opening scene is just example after example of them slotting in all of his wardrobe, basically, and all of his like mannerisms and tics. It's just them like honestly kind of gracefully explaining all those things given how much of this work they're doing. But nonetheless, it's them doing the bad prequel thing where like you're explaining the wrong things. We don't care. We understand. Like I have a nice pair of shoes that I like, but you'd learn nothing about me by me telling you where I bought them. So it's just a series of those things. Like the River Phoenix is excellent in this movie. Like we're not exposed to very much of him. It is still one of the only performances I think of him. I'm not like super familiar with River Phoenix as an actor. I know he died too soon. Rest in peace. But he's so good in this, and he's a spitting image for Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
But this sequence is so Looney Tunes and bonkers that as a kid, you don't care that it's bad storytelling, that it's like they're investing their energy in the wrong part of the story. It's just sick because he fights a lion with a whip and he gets that's where he gets the cool hat, and he falls in a pit of snakes. Oh, that's why he's afraid of snakes. He does a magic trick and he disappears, and it's really cool. So I mean, I still love it. I found myself like, you're conscious that it's maybe bad storytelling while you're watching it, but that's the affection of having seen something when you were a little kid. It doesn't matter. I love that scene. It's so good.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's probably the memory too, getting me as well. But I know that the most cliche part of it is figuring out who Indiana Jones is and why he became who he is. But like, I love that. I love that we see how he got his little scar on his chin.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
That's such an iconic Harrison Ford thing. I really thought that in Solo they were going to do the same thing, but they didn't. They refrained, and I was a little sad about it. But
do they give Alden Ehrenreich the scar in that movie? I watched it recently. I didn't notice the scar on his chin though.
So yeah, Harrison Ford has a famous scar right here on his chin.
Does Alden Ehrenreich have one in the movie?
Who?
The guy playing Han Solo in the movie Solo.
Oh no, he doesn't.
Okay.
That's why I thought they were gonna. Oh,
my bad. Okay,
I was like, who the hell are you talking about? I don't know that actor's name.
There might not be any reason to. I'm not. He has a very interesting film career that might actually stall out with that particular movie. It's a sad story we don't need to get into.
We don't need to go there.
But that's weird because that movie is entirely them doing that stupid explain his backstory shit. Like, he's traveling alone. We'll name him
Solo.
Fuck you.
I don't want to veer too far into the Solo realm, but like, what else were we expecting? You know, like, what else was that movie supposed to be? I don't know.
I don't know.
That was something that kept echoing through my head, and I can't say I was like its largest fan, but I certainly wasn't its strongest critic. But
of course, interestingly, you know who wrote the Solo movie?
No.
Lawrence Kasdan, who has a huge part in writing a previous Star Wars movie and the Indiana Jones movies. He's been a key figure in adapting these stories for the screen. So interesting guy, Lawrence Kasdan.
Super interesting. But back to opening sequence.
Anyway,
I loved getting that. And I think what I appreciated so much about it is you really see Indy getting his inspiration for like who he wants to be. But he has this sort of like twist, which is that he wants to do it for good, not for money. It belongs in a museum. It's not worth $10 million. That moment where the guy gives him the hat, I'm just like, oh my God, this is it's so good to me.
It honestly, like we watch things that we watched as a child with the mind of a child still, and they resonate for the very same reasons, because that's how we learned how these stories are told. Also, it's just like a snake eating its own tail. What I like about that scene a lot, and I will stick up for, is the fact that he becomes disillusioned with people in his profession, archaeologists, with the cops, with rich people, and his dad in the exact same moment.
Yeah.
And you see him lose faith in all of those institutions at the same moment with the hat scene. And that's actually really powerful to think about. And that actually does inform parts of his character that we see play out for the rest of the movie. He fucking hates rich people. He's really uncomfortable in their house. He doesn't like other archaeologists, does not trust them, although he respects them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, he loses his innocence in that moment. he sort of starts to disrespect all of the authorities that he should respect, right? I love it, like including his father, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Indiana Jones went punk rock back in like the 40s. It's pretty sick. Oh, it's 20s, I guess. Anyway, so can we talk briefly about the other thing we haven't remarked on in that scene, and something that carries out for the rest of the movie, and one of the reasons this is like a towering achievement in film, what I really, really believe, this is one of the most beautiful movies that has ever been made. This is so gorgeous. Like the opening shots of Utah, and then every location where they actually took a film crew to and shot on practical locations. And then they were going to different continents on Earth using natural monuments, using seven wonders of the world to frame scenes around and stuff. It's an incredibly beautiful movie. And it's such a like, it's the result of a lot of different artists practicing a lot of different crafts and skills to bring this all together into one film. So there's matte painters and location scouters and obviously still photographers, but it's really, really, really beautiful in a way that a lot of movies these days are.
Yeah, and even watching it, on a giant screen, and whatever, like the nice LED, OLED, whatever you got, it's really nice.
Do you want to talk about your TV real quick, Jesse?
I mean, I don't really, because it's not my television, Corey. It's my husband's television. But it looks good on a giant TV, and it still feels good, and it's not like grainy or crazy. It is it's still a beautiful thing to watch on the TV, on a big screen. So you got to appreciate that about it for sure. But what would you say is like your favorite moment of the movie?
Oh God. Well, I mean, it's a movie that really does build towards its third act, and it builds toward it. Like, honestly, every goddamn frame in this movie, Jesse, I adore this movie so much, because as soon as I said, like, because my favorite moment is him encountering the ancient knight in the tomb at the very end. But then I thought, oh, the library's really good. And that's a great Looney Tunes gag with the stamp of the library.
The stamp is excellent.
Him, like Harrison Ford doing a winky, like dog shit Scottish accent when Sean Connery's in the movie to sneak into the castle. Hilarious. Really, really good bit. I don't know if it's like the image of Sean Connery trying to use the 4-leaf clover lighter to light the ropes and then setting the boat on fire in the room, them getting like creating a diversion with the boat and then jumping on the motorcycle and busting out of the crate is it's so incredible and so cathartic. Him like flipping over the motorcycle by sticking the pole in the spikes and the spokes, which is something my brother, future guest Chris Damon, did to a kid in our neighborhood one time, and it was very funny. And he got yelled at by the neighbor's dad. It's don't put a don't put
Did he do it because he saw Indiana Jones do it?
We had seen the movie by that point, so I'm not going to make an argument against don't portray violence in media because kids will copy it. Kids will absolutely copy it, but we shouldn't stop making movies. But yeah, I have to. I'll ask him later on. But I think that's why. But my favorite moment in the movie is what it's all building to. It's building to them actually having it's a son retracing the life and work of his father and receiving eternal life. It's a Christ story, Jesse.
Oh my God. It's like you were reading the Bible the whole time.
What a lame thing for an action movie. No, it was the Bible. But no, that really spoke to me this last time. We talked briefly about this last time. Like the religious aspects really spoke to me on this, because it is a story about Christ and Christianity made by a Jewish filmmaker. And it's the story of a son having to retrace the steps of his father and carry out his works on earth to retrieve salvation for himself and whoever else would claim it. And it's a Christ story. It's so good. But him just encountering the very, very old knight who's been there for 1,000 years or so since the Crusades, and besting him in combat when he can't pick up his sword, and then being gifted the cup of a carpenter and choosing it and choosing wisely. I don't know why, but I 1,000,000% cried at this movie this time around. We watched it. I'm not that hard to get. I'm a pretty easy cry watching movies, but it was for a different reason than ones I'd ever cried about it before. It was like we found salvation, and we found it through the word of God. It's such a weird thing for me to identify with, but it really, like touched a nerve for me this time around. I'm not sure why that was.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you put it, and that he's retracing his father's work in this moment, and you see like when he first embarks on the journey, and those crazy spinning wheels of blade death come over, and they've already beheaded 3 guys, and you see them both mouthing and saying out loud, "The penitent man will pass." Right? Like there's this connection between the two, and you're just like, Neil, like you're just find yourself like saying that.
Like I caught my mouth moving along to like when they cut to Sean Connery, "The penitent man shall pass. The penitent man shall pass." Like my mouth was moving along with his words. It's such like a visceral experience watching this movie. But like another like thing that really spoke to me, because I love my dad very much, but we've had kind of a complicated relationship. We didn't always get along when I was a lot younger. So like dad stuff really gets me all the fucking time. And a lot of it is stuff that he showed me. Like the next movie we'll be discussing is one that he showed me. And I love it the more because he did. But this idea of a son learning what not to do from his dad, but learning all the important stuff that he should do from his dad at the same time really speaks to like what it means to be a child of a person in this world, what it means to grow up having parents. You learn what to do and what not to do. And ideally you'll have done it better at the end of the story than your dad did. And he does, he accomplishes what his dad never did. But he uses it as a way to take care of and rescue his dad. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, Corey, I love the way you're looking at it and analyzing it. It's so good. I think I'm with you entirely. I think that it's so cool to look at it through the lens of a grown-up, even so you can see it that way and understand that depth of the situation. And I'm going to look at it from a little bit more of like a memory perspective. How many times did my dad and I say, like, we would, choose the next flavor of Skittle, and he'd be like, "Wow, you chose poorly," and like, or you chose wisely when we chose the right thing to have for dinner, right? Those moments are so good at the end when the stakes are so high. Henry has been shot and we've got to save him. And there's the humor in that as well, right? Like Jehovah starts with an I. And also like, well, let me take this leap of faith and stick my leg out like I'm a stupid person.
Has there ever been a film moment more cathartic than his foot landing on the platform? It's beautiful. And we've spoken about this, but his dumb leg going up in a cartoonish fashion.
90-degree angle.
like he's goose stepping, but then him landing on that platform and leaving the sand behind. Like when you're a kid and you watch like action movies or detective movies and stuff like that, you pick up on cool, smart things that people do. At least I know I did. I think you were probably along the same lines, but I always pictured that there was going to be a scenario where I had to frantically take a rubbing of an object with a secret message on it, or I would have to like leave a breadcrumb trail for my family to follow me behind because I found the secret passageway. It's weird that the child brain is the most miraculous object on the planet, and that's exactly how it functions. And I think there are large parts of this movie that are, if not specifically designed to work with a kid's brain and mean a completely different thing for the parent in the situation, then I think that they accomplish it by accident, but it's still a feat nevertheless. But yeah, there's like this movie is constant moments like that, moments that I'll remember forever. My dad did a similar thing with "You Chose Poorly." He would also yell "Junior" at me as I was coming into the house. Junior. And my dad cannot do accents, and I love him very, very much. And we love that about himself. Whenever you meet my dad, because you haven't yet.
No, I haven't.
And you'll not remember to ask him this, but I'll remind you. Ask him to do his Matthew McConaughey impression, because it will mean a lot coming from somebody who's not his son's. But it's world record worst impression in the world, and he gets no small amount of joy from how bad it is, and he insists on doing it all the time, and it's the best bit in the entire world.
Does he talk about his Lincoln?
No, he doesn't. No, it's all dazed and confused. It's all dazed and confused quotes. He didn't follow the Matthew McConaughey canon past the reconnaissance, he's not quoting True Detective at us, No, it's very stuck in time impression, but it's good. It's perfect.
Yes. So I gotta reflect on, like, you kept talking about like the moments that make up this movie, and I think one of my favorite ones is their sort of escape from the castle, and they're still sort of trying to get out. And one of the ways, well, once they figure out where they're going, they have to sort of escape on a blimp. And it's so good because, again, starting a sequence of events that just lead to moment after moment of just excitement and hilarity, like him having to like get the guy out of the way and steal his uniform, and then the tickets please moment, like, oh, he didn't have his ticket. Everyone,
no ticket was another catchphrase in the Damon household for a lot of years. And anytime someone got rejected, tackled on a football field, no ticket. If someone fell down, no ticket. It works in every situation. Yeah.
No ticket. But then they end up realizing that the blimp is turning around, and they've got to get in this tiny plane. And this plane, they think they're getting away, and then of course the German Nazi the planes are coming right at them, and Indy's like, all right, Dad, get out the gun. And he's like, what? No, what are you talking about? Like 11 o'clock. And he pulls out his watch, like, what's happening at 11 o'clock? Like, I don't know. And he says, Dad, point the guns at 11 o'clock. And then he proceeds to shoot off the tail of the...
it's the best. Plane. It's perfect.
And blames it on the Germans. I can give much better than that.
You have a built-in excuse there. Like you blame the parts on dogs, you blame the plane blown up on the Nazis. It's easy.
And then they get to the beach, after a few more steps, but they get to the beach, and there's this classic moment, one plane left, and Connery's got to figure out, Professor Henry Jones, how to get rid of it. And Indy's trying to come up with some plan, and Henry goes for a walk on the beach, and then who does he quote? The sun in the sky.
Not Constantine, Charlemagne.
Charlemagne,
yeah.
And he gets those birds to go up and take that Nazi down. It's just classic. It's so
Which is another moment of, like, think about James Bond squawking like a seagull and flapping his umbrella open and closed on the beach. It's a really, really good image.
It's so good. I love that moment so much. I think it's just one of the most fun sequences in the movie.
I just keep recalling other things that like mean the world to me about this movie. We have not talked about the library or the catacombs with the rats and the petroleum.
Yep.
We have not talked about the boat chase. We've not talked about Ilsa at all out of the incest of the movie, but she deserves better than that, than what we're giving her. Or Sala. Or like Denham Elliott.
Yeah.
Marcus. They're like, every character in this movie that kicks complete ass is so good and so perfect forever. And what else can you say? Like it's not boring to talk about, because like I love, like, when you talk about a movie, you relive it in your head, but it's a perfect movie to me, at least. It sounds like to you as well. But there's nothing actually wrong with this movie, despite the criticisms of it, because it's a special part of your life. That's why you love a movie.
And you would watch it over and over. I think one of the most interesting things that I learned about it was something you said, that it was who contributed to the script.
Who was it? I'm going to look this up, because like credit where credit.
Stoppard.
It was Tom Stoppard. Yes, well remembered. Absolutely. So yeah, Tom Stoppard was brought in after the script had been written to polish up the Henry Sr. and Jr. dialogue and their relationship. So every word spoken between the Henrys was entirely written by Tom Stoppard after the script had already been developed. So that if you love their relationship, if you love like the dynamic of everything we've described about fathers and their sons and fathers and their kids today, a great debt is owed to playwright Tom Stoppard. Good work, Tom.
And the theater nerd in me loved learning that fact, because a very famous playwright contributing to this incredible action movie is just my favorite thing in the world.
It almost implies that should happen more frequently.
It almost implies that. That's so funny. The other ad I gotta get here is the music. John Williams, so classic, like the iconic bell ringing of the Indiana Jones theme song, just getting you in the like mood to watch this movie and enjoy it. And then you sort of hear you sort of hear like you hear John Williams sort of do the same thing in a number of different movies,
John Williams
right?
writes
He's got
melody,
a signature.
and then he
Exactly.
composes scores around them. He'll write a single line of melody for a violin or for a horn, and then compose the rest of the music around it, at least presumably.
But I think also in these like little moments too, like there's the little quiet moments where there's a scene transition, or there's like someone's like writing a letter, like, and there's that soft melody. You can hear the same ones in Star Wars and Jurassic Park, and like all of his famous music.
He never misses. John Williams never misses.
No.
It's always incredible. And I'm not sure if a human being, I think there might be some costume designer that's maybe won more Oscars than John Williams has, but I think he might have the cup. I think he might be the winningest Oscar contender in history. Yeah. Is he like, when is he bad? When has he made a bad score? I'm sure someone could tell me. But no, and it's a magic trick, which I bring up a lot because he has made maybe 15, 20 melodies that most human beings on earth would recognize with about 2 or 3 notes. An incredible skill. And while also balancing his scores so that they never overwhelm what's on the screen. They're always complementary. They're always there to serve a purpose of either scene transitions. He's like doing the work and making an organic part of the art, but also he creates bangers. Like there's like 20 songs that you can hum off the top of your head that John Williams made.
Absolutely.
Like never misses.
No, I totally agree. I also am reading. Okay, so one of the things that really caught me about our first conversation was around all of these like amazing fun facts that IMDb has about this movie.
Yeah, let's go through a few. What do you got?
So this one's really fun. 2,000 rats were bred for their production. They had to be bred specifically as ordinary rats would have been riddled with disease. So like they had to breed them in a specific way so like diseases wouldn't spread. That's great.
A country's generation of rats was bred for the purposes of this one scene in this movie. It's incredible stuff.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about at all is like this great part of this movie and all of the Indiana Jones movies and many movies in general is fighting Nazis, right? And there's this great sequence where Harrison Ford like ends up in front of Hitler, and he signs his book. So not only is this the map to the Holy Grail, but it also has Adolf Hitler's signature in it. As he's surrounded by books that are burning is just the irony. Okay, wait, you had a really good one about the Nazi.
Oh, the Nazi uniforms in that scene are real. They had, when they were scouting for wardrobe design and kind of like developing their style around it, one of the wardrobe assistants stumbled upon this enormous cache in a warehouse somewhere in England of actual genuine Nazi uniforms that had been either worn or never distributed. But these were like, they were dressed as Nazis because they were wearing Nazi uniforms. So it's possible that, and this is gross, but like it's possible the blood of Nazis is in that scene at the rally. It's possible like that hair fibers and the skin of actual real life German Nazis in that scene, which is incredible to think about. But to counteract all that bad juju that Spielberg was putting into the world, as all the Nazi soldiers did their Heil Hitlers, he had them cross their fingers behind their backs with their other hands to undo it. So as to not put the bad energy out there, which is extremely cute as a director detail. Like you can do it, but you don't mean it, right? Okay, cool. Right. Yeah, do the thing behind your back. It's fine. It's make believe, guys. We're kidding. We're kidding. Don't worry about it.
Okay, here's another one. I love that story, by the way. Like the fact that these are like real. I mean, I don't love that they're real Nazi uniforms.
How did you feel about putting that fabric on your body?
Oh, awful, right? I like almost don't know that I could contract to unless it was in my contract. I don't know if I could do it. But yeah, it's madness. I love the crossing of the fingers also, just to do something to make it not real. So one of the things I really, really love is Indiana's birth name was finally revealed in this movie. Henry Jones Jr. for 3 movies had been addressed as Indiana or Indy. The name Indiana came from a dog, but as we, that's revealed at the very end of the movie. One of the best parts of the whole movie is is them laughing, Sala laughing at the fact that Indiana Jones is named after a dog. But the name Indiana came from a dog in this movie and in real life. George Lucas's Alaskan Malamute, who lived in the 1970s.
Perfect dog, perfect name.
And a dog of this breed is seen in the movie when young Indiana returns home with the cross in his hand. So you can see a little tribute to George.
Yeah, and I think it's a little sad to think about it. It wasn't Indiana playing Indiana the dog in Indiana Jones. It was a dog named Indiana playing a dog named Indiana in the movie Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Whoa, too much.
Too much.
Crazy. There's so much fun facts about this movie. Like
Go ahead.
This one's not that fun, but when shooting in Venice, they were allowed to have complete control of the Grand Canal from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. for one day. And then they had to do it all.
Then you guys got to go. You got to start ruining our beautiful historic pier. Our city is sinking. Get out of here. But like, speaking of that scene, though, okay, I want to give a very particular shout out because I think one of the film villains that has stuck with me the most is the, not like cult member, but basically the man in the fez who's a part of a secret order to protect the Holy Grail fighting Indiana Jones on the back of a speedboat. It's an incredible sequence. And I couldn't I still can't put my finger on why this sticks out to me so much. I think it's a little bit about the character design and the fact that action sequence kicks ass and those boats are beautiful. But I think like Kevork Malikian, the actor, deserves special credit in this movie because he does not have a lot of screen time. He's very indelible. He plays Kazum. And I just he's one of my all-time favorite screen villains. I think he's great. And he's not even a villain. He's just trying to protect the Holy Grail. He's just trying to make sure these grubby, shitty Americans don't get their hands on the most precious relic on earth.
Yeah, no, that scene is great. It sort of introduces you to the action that you're going to see in this movie because it really is like it smacks you upside the face with action. It's scene after scene after scene after scene of moments of action. But that one in particular is so good. And to your point, those boats are freaking awesome. Like,
yeah, they're sick.
That wood is so good.
It's like the world's most beautiful bowling alley or like yacht deck was turned into a speedboat. It's so gorgeous.
And they all get ruined, just like watching them getting destroyed. You're like, no, not these boats.
I tell you, that's one of my favorite moments in the movie. When it's being backed into the big boat propeller, there's a moment where rather than cleanly cutting through the boat and just slicing out of it, it obviously sets off a mechanism that makes all the panels fly up at the same time on the boat. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
it just kind of like explodes up the back. And every time I'm like just waiting, like, oh, it's going to blow up the fucking boat. It's so sick.
Yes, and that also leads to a really wonderful line. Like, if you don't tell me where he is, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, well, my solo's prepared is yours. Oh, man, it's so good.
And then he gets another banger down the road when they've reached an understanding and they're dropping Kazum off at the Venice Pier. He's like, you should ask yourself why you seek the cup of Christ. Is it for his glory or for yours?
Yes.
And that's the whole thesis of the movie is right there. And they give it to a bit player. It's so good.
Yeah, it is like a thread of the movie, Oh man, I just love this movie. I could talk about it all day.
We've already gone like longer than we expected to go. We were like we spent some time talking about it, and they're like, we probably don't need to walk through the whole script. And look, we made a new hour out of just like, oh yeah, this shit's cool too.
This and that, and Petra, and all of these amazing things.
Petra is one of the most beautiful things that could be captured on camera. It's so cool.
The beautiful sort of like orangey end to this movie is absolutely stellar because it takes place in this desert and there's that great moment where Indy falls off a cliff and everyone thinks he's dead. And he's not.
The whole tank sequence we haven't talked about, where Indiana Jones pilots 4 horses, or it should be said that Harrison Ford pilots 4 horses, and Jonathan Rhys Davis. I'm gonna kick myself for Jonathan Rhys Davies. There you go, nailed it. One pilots 4 camels at the exact same time. These men drove 4 wild animals all at the same time. It's incredible stuff from them.
It's So good. Yeah, this movie's a classic. You should probably pick it up and watch it.
Really good. And also, I think we should take a moment to thank our dads for introducing us to this.
Thank our dads. And also, we didn't acknowledge Sean Connery's death. He died.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
this year. Yeah.
But, maybe not such a great person sometimes.
Yeah. I guess it must be said that we love him and he beat women, and that's what you can say about a lot of men who came up at a certain time in the world. It sucks. It's not great, but it's true. Yeah. R.I.P. to Sean Connery.
Are special. So for that, we can thank them for introducing us to these classic movies. There were a few movies actually that almost made my list.
Absolutely.
That were dad introduced. So The Birds is one of them.
Great.
There was a Star Wars episode of Star Wars I was debating between adding on the top 5.
Which one would you have done?
I would have done. So it's my runner up on my list currently.
It's your number 6 seat?
Yeah, it's my number 6 seat, which is The Empire Strikes Back.
Good movie.
Yes, good movie. I have one more on my list that is a dad intro.
Don't introduce it yet. I'm really enjoying the fact that I don't know what the other 4 are at this point. Yeah, so this episode is dedicated to Mike Lynn and Hanson Damon. We love you, dads. But my entire life was dictated by whatever my dad happened to land on or choose to watch on TV,
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many things when I think about my entire taste in comedy was things my dad showed me. So he showed me Mystery Science Theater 3000. He showed me The Kids in the Hall. He showed me Monty Python. He showed me all of these incredible things that shape the way my brain works. And credit where it's due, dads rock. Dads are good.
Dads are awesome. We gotta love our dads. Oh man. Well, thanks to Indiana Jones and Professor Henry Jones for giving us a great ride this week on Showstoppers.
Thanks to the dads out there. Shout out to all dads, but only the good ones. Any final thoughts on dads or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade you'd like to share?
Just when you pick your next movie to watch, choose shit
about that. A little hint at the next episode. We're going to be recording in just a couple of days now. And the next movie we'll be covering is my very, very favorite movie of all time. I think the opposite problem of you is I know exactly what my favorite movie is, but the rest of the 5 is really difficult to fill out. I'm almost there. I'm very excited about talking about these with you. Our next episode is going to be a movie my dad showed me when I was very young that he loves very much. Shouts out to my mom, also loves it and quotes all the time. It's the movie Raised in Arizona. I'm gonna teach you to love Nicolas Cage. I'm gonna try to anyway.
I can't wait for the challenge.
And we'll be joined by our most very special guest, but that's a teaser for next time. But yeah, that's about all I got on this one, bud.
All right. Well, choose wisely. We'll see you soon.